the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday night. 2 shows in one day. Start getting used to that. We're going to have quite a few of these. All right, so yes, the dreaded topic has come. We're going to be talking about Trump today. We'll see how long. I don't know that I have that much to say about Trump, but we have to comment, right? He did declare that he is running for president in 2024. We've all been in suspense for a long time. Now we know. And it is certainly newsworthy and certainly comment-worthy on the Yaron Brook Show. As many of you know, we did a short show this morning at 11 a.m. East Coast time, which was focused on the news. So that is our new daily news show. There will be another one hopefully tomorrow. I mean, it's somewhat up to, depends on that there's any news, but also there is the issue of my time and other things happening, but I will try to do one every morning, with the exception of Thanksgiving and exception when I'm traveling. Not every morning, 5 days a week. I will not do them on the weekend. And then that means that there will be several days in which we will have 2 shows a day, like today. So hopefully you're up for that. Hopefully, you're up to listening to me more than once a day. That's a lot, I know. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plans out into the numbers. We'll see how it pans out in terms of financial support. Remember, there is a goal of raising in each one of these shows about $650. That's the evening show. Morning shows are $250. So we'll see if that is a sustainable amount, and if we can sustain an audience, if we can sustain a significant audience. Quite a few people listened into the news show this morning. It might be that there's that's where the real interest lies. We will see. But then again, a lot of people listened into the one on effective altruism and FTX, so it might just be the topics. We'll see how many people listen today. I have a feeling a lot of people are pretty sick and tired of hearing me talk about Trump. Also, this is always a topic that risks people unsubscribing. But hey, on the Yaron Brook Show, you get it. You get it. As I call it. So, you get the unvarnished reality as I see it, and the truth, and I'm not going to water it down, and I'm not going to change my assessments, and I'm not going to do issues because they're controversial, and I'm not going to do shows because some people are going to be offended. It's not how we roll here. All right, so let's see. Anonymous user reminds us, yes, we have reached 34,000 subscribers. It's been a weird month, November. I think November might be the least added subscribers we've ever had. Not sure exactly what's going on. I will say that one thing that's dropped is the amount of shows that you guys are actually sharing. So sharing is down. And when sharing is down, new people are down. When new people are down, subscribers are down. But anyway, I hope if there are people listening right now and who like the show that are not subscribers yet, I hope you subscribe. Please subscribe. We're trying to make 35,000 as quickly as possible. Actually, we want to make 50,000 as quickly as possible. We need your help. And if you subscribe, you get notifications when the show is on. If you click that bell thingy right there, you'll also get an announcement notification when the show is on, when it goes live. So go for it. Subscribe. Very little to lose. Adam says, a public service announcement to watch the productivity show this week. Hope you all listen in and get value from Yaron's take. Yeah, so that will be, what is going on here? Why is this not changing? All right, we're gonna get rid of that. We're gonna start over something here. All right, I think that is going to be better. Yes, much better. So we're going to talk about productivity. It is Thanksgiving, the holiday of productivity, of productiveness. So we're going to be talking about productivity in all different respects. I expect that to be on Wednesday at 8 p.m. It's going to be a fun show. I hope you tune in. I hope you join us. I think there's some interesting things to cover and some interesting things to talk about, both from a moral perspective and an economic perspective and a business perspective. The whole issue of production, productivity, and productiveness. All different concepts, by the way, so we'll talk about that as well. All right. Linda says, well, I'm one listener tired of Trump. But this is the thing, guys. Believe me, nobody is more tired of Trump than me. I've had it. It's boring. It's uninteresting. It's exhausting. It's frustrating. It's worse than frustrating. It's infuriating. But he's still there. He's not going away. We need to talk about it. We need to talk about him. You can't bury him in the closet. We can't hide him in the cellar. He's right there, right in front of us. He's not going anywhere. And he is, we'll talk about this, but he's got a real chance of at least being the Republican nominee for president in 2024. And everything that means and everything that implies, including the possibility that he might be president again, to what is, the most powerful nation on the planet. So, anyway, we have to talk about Trump whether we want to or not. So Trump announced that he is running in 2024. It was a long speech. I think it lasted about an hour, meandering all over the place. As usual with Trump, filled with misinformation, disinformation, just a mixture of all kind of nonsense and exaggerations. I mean, this is my favorite. My favorite was that that Trump said during the speech announcing his candidacy. He said that he was told that if he got elected president, the people were told that if Trump got elected president, within weeks there'd be wars. Wars would be everywhere because So Trump says, and yet, and I'm quoting directly from him, and yet I've gone decades without a war. The first president to do for that long a period. I mean, if Biden said that, you'd all be arguing he should be hospitalized. He should be institutionalized. Trump was president for 4 years. I think that's less than a decade. And it's only 6 years ago, so I think that's, again, less than a decade. And yet I've gone decades without a war. The first president to do it for that long. And then, of course, it evades the fact that while he was president, we had a war in Afghanistan, we had a war in Iraq, we had a war in Syria, all wars that the United States participated in, all wars, by the way, that the United States did not win while Trump was president. But in addition to that, we had dozens of airstrikes, including drone strikes in Somalia, Yemen, Libya, Pakistan, including the airstrike on Iranian General Qasem Soleimani that resulted in Iranian retaliation against U.S. forces. So to boast about not having managed any wars under his presidency is a bit of an absurdity. And then to say that it's been decades, I mean, he obviously misspoke in a big way. But it is entertaining. But you can go over the speech. I encourage you to listen to his speech. He announced he was running for president. It's an important speech. It's just as absurd how much of what Trump says is either just false, exaggerated, ridiculous, or something else. He is completely detached from reality. Now, it is true that you could say the same thing about Biden. You can say the same thing about a lot of politicians. But Trump does elevate this to kind of an art form. He does elevate this. The bombacity is truly unique and quite exceptional. So in spite of the fact that Trump endorsed, Trump-supported candidates who embraced Trump and embraced the idea that the election in 2020 was stolen. Those candidates who embraced the whole Trumpist agenda, in spite of the fact that many of those candidates lost, and that generally the midterm election is viewed as a loss for Trump, a loss for his influence, for his advocacy, for his candidates, for the kind of people he selected, and so on. In spite of that, it didn't deter him at all. One iota. Didn't stop him at all from announcing that only he could save America, that only he could save the Republican Party, that only he can save the world, and that Donald Trump, he must be president and must be the chosen one in 2024. So first, I found it interesting that he's willing to go all in, that he really is committed to running this, in spite of the fact that every indication right now shows that he will lose in a general election, even to Biden, who is one of the least unpopular presidents in American history, is maybe only president more unpopular than Biden is Trump. But it does appear that the market, the voting market, is sending the clear message that Trump is not electable. He won the presidency in 2016, but then he lost the House in 2018, the Senate in 2020, the presidency in 2020, and then in 2022, a massively disappointing election. So he has lost 4 elections, and you can directly blame this on him because the link is obvious. It is not subtle at all. It is not maybe. It is not by implication. It is direct. It is observable by anybody who has an objective mind. Anybody who has anybody looking at this can see the relationship between Trump and losing. And yet, he still chose to run. And I believe that as of now, and as of maybe even much later, I think he is he's the guy to beat. If I were placing odds on who would be the Republican nominee for president in 2024, you'd have to put most of the odds on Trump. Trump right now, in spite of the DeSantis rise, in spite of the fact that Nikki Haley says she's running, and Pence looks like he's running, and Pompeo looks like he's running, and Chris Christie might be running, and the former governor of Maryland might be running. In spite of the fact that all these people are running, or maybe because of the fact that all these people are running, Donald Trump actually has a pretty good chance of being the nominee, of actually getting more votes from Republicans than any other candidate out there. Now, that is shocking and disappointing and unsettling, even, given Trump's performance as president and given Trump's character, which he has only enhanced, has only made worse, enhanced in the worst direction, since he left the White House. And yet he is still the front runner. And the reason he's the front runner is that there is a certain percentage of the Republican Party, there is a certain percentage of Republican voters who will vote for Trump no matter what. What did he say? I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and they'd still vote for me. Yes, they would. He has done the equivalent of that to the Republican Party. So Trump is going to run, and Trump has a very, very good chance of winning the primaries. About 25%, but with 25% of Republicans will vote for Trump no matter what. And then the rest of the votes are split between all these different candidates. And if the party coalesces around one candidate to fight against Trump, to go up against Trump, one, then yes, I don't think Trump will win. But if, like in 2016, they splintered the vote across many candidates, If, like 2016, many of those candidates stick around for a while, then what you will see is Trump getting that 25%, in some states much more than that, beating them in key places, and by the time the rest of the field is winnowed down to maybe one or two people who actually beat him, it's too late. Also remember that once Trump starts winning, he will take on the mantle of a winner. He will drop the mantle of loser. And is likely to pick up another 25%, 30% of the Republican vote. Those voters who don't like Trump particularly, but hey, he can beat the left. Hey, he stands up for our values. Hey, he's whatever, fill in the blank. He's the only guy who can do it. He's the only voice out there, which I don't think is the case. I actually think he's the only Republican, literally the only Republican who could lose, to the Democrat, to Biden or whoever the Democrats choose. So it's going to take effort to lose the Democrats, given how popular they really are. The Republican Party put that effort forward in the midterms. They put the best effort forward in nominating the worst possible candidates and advocating for the worst kind of ideas. With Trump, they could do it again. So my advice to the Republican Party, nobody's listening to me, nobody really cares, is one candidate. Make it Donald Trump versus Ron DeSantis. And Ron DeSantis has the possibility and the potential to kick Donald Trump's butt. But it looks like Nikki Haley's running. It looks like all these other people are running. Every one of them would be better than Trump. Every one of them maybe could beat him, maybe not, if they were the only ones running. But as a group, I think Donald Trump will run circles around them, or there's the real risk that he runs circles around them and he becomes the nominee, which would be an unmitigated disaster for this country. All right, so that's how I think it plays out. That's how I think it plays out. Let's see what happens. My candidate of all those people, my preferred candidate is Nikki Haley. I think she's the only candidate who has spoken up in defense of markets. She's the only one who's spoken up in defense of individual liberty. I don't think any of these other candidates is really good. Ron DeSantis is way too much of gives in to the kind of the social conservatives and the cultural wars, and I think the others are non-entities. Pence is a nothing, Pompeo is a nothing, and Pompeo and Pence both have been tainted by their close relationship to Trump. I think that who else is running? The governor of Maryland is way too moderate. He's just a middle of the road nobody, and he could win in Maryland, but he can't win. He can't win where Republicans need to win. While I'm not enthusiastic about Ron DeSantis, he could beat Trump, but the only person I'm enthusiastic about is Nikki Haley. And again, even her, I found it very upsetting to see Haley grovel before Trump on several occasions. Refused to criticize him, grovel before him, try to somehow link up with his supporters. So, a lot of people are saying Trump doesn't have a chance for two big reasons. One, he's being criticized left and right by everybody in the Republican Party. How can he win? Everybody is after him. Everybody's criticizing. Everybody's sick and tired of him already. And yet, the same thing happened in 2016. In 2015 and 2016, everybody in the Republican Party, everybody, including people who are today big Trump supporters, everybody criticized Trump. Everybody went after Trump. Everybody was horrified by Trump, from the National Review to conservative and neocons and all kinds of conservatives. Everybody, the religious right, everybody went after Trump. And he won anyway. And then they all came around, and they all became Trumpsters. So the fact that everybody's criticizing him now, it doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. At the end of the day, all the people on TV, all the commentators, Ben Shapiro, all the others count. Ben Shapiro criticized Trump in 15 and 16. Didn't matter. Even Mark Levin and a lot of people who became, I think that to a large extent, what's his name? The talk show host who used to be a Fox celebrity and started his own network and has his own radio show. I can see his face. But anyway, they all attacked. They all attacked Trump in 15 and 16. And he won anyway. And they all lost audience. And Glenn Beck comes to mind, right? Glenn Beck, hugely anti-Trump. He was viciously anti-Trump all the way almost to the end. And then what happened? He found Jesus afterwards, found Trump, Jesus, whatever. And when he found Trump, by then it was too late for him. He'd lost a lot of his audience. And I don't think Glenn Beck has ever really recovered from that. But he found Trump, and he's a huge supporter of Trump. So even if a lot of them are going to be critical of Trump now, doesn't mean anything. Does not mean anything. Because once Trump gets rolling, once he gets his core audience, which is at least 25% of the Republican Party, if not more, once he rallies them to the flag, once he has big rallies with lots of people, all those critics within the Republican Party will come groveling before Trump and asking for forgiveness. So I don't think you can rule Trump out at all. I think Trump has a real chance of being the nominee. I don't think he can win, but I think he has a real chance of being the nominee, which I think is tragic and destructive to the Republican Party. I think it is tragic and destructive to America. It is the worst possible outcome. It's a continuation of the worst possible outcome we've already had. It happen already, partially because they'll lose again. And therefore you'll get another leftist president, which you will blame on me because I didn't support Trump. But I didn't support you nominating Trump. All right, so I think Trump is a real potential. I think he can really win. I think the fact that everybody's speaking up against him means nothing. People are tired of the establishment. Yes, but Trump is a loser. So Trump is not an alternative because everything he touches loses. Everything he touches loses. Right? So what alternative does he present? He doesn't present an alternative. He presents a strategy of how to lose the Democrats. You want to lose the Democrats? Nominate Trump. You want to lose the Democrats? Have Trump choose your candidates. You want to lose the Democrats? Have Trump be your spokesman. He is a loser. A loser not in a sense just of a loser as a human being, which I think he is, but a loser in a sense of electoral politics. Americans are tired of him. They won't vote for him. They didn't vote for him in 2020. There's zero chance I'll vote for him in 2024. And it's not like they love Biden. They hate Biden. They're looking for an alternative for Biden. But not Trump. That's not the alternative they want. It's not the alternative they want. All right. Just like in 2016, I think to a large extent Trump won because people hated Hillary and they voted against Hillary. I think he lost in 2020 because people hated Trump and they voted against Trump. Again, let me remind you, for those who still want Trump, let me remind you, He lost the House in 2018. He lost the Senate in 2020. Clearly, it was him who lost the Senate. He lost the presidency in 2020, clearly, in spite of the fact that he brought out more Republican voters than any Republican ever in history. He still lost because more people hated him. And he just lost the midterms. And if you don't think the midterms were lost because of Trump, then you don't know, you're not connected to the reality as it exists in America today. House often flips in the midterms. Democrats did a lot better in 2018 than Republicans just did in 2022. So yes, you'd think it would flip significantly, particularly with an unpopular president like Biden, and yet barely flipped. That's the Trump effect. But look, I'm not going to argue with you. Scott wants to defend Trump no matter what. Scott wants to be on the losing side. Scott wants Republicans to not be victors. Scott wants Biden to be, or the Democrats to be presidents for another 4 years. Scott wants it continuously, but he will go to his grave defending Trump no matter how many times Trump actually loses. Right? Doesn't matter. Got to defend him. So let me say a few things about my objections to Trump, and I'm not going to say too much because I could spend 5 hours talking about my objections to Trump, and I would it would be hard to cover. And I've already spent hours and hours and hours, as you guys know, talking about my objections to Trump. But I want to step back and give you the kind of the big picture. My main objection to Trump is that he is a committed, unapologetic, principled, although the word doesn't really fit, pragmatist. He is more of a pragmatist than anybody I know in politics. And he is unabashed about it. That is, his pragmatism is, he admits it freely. He is not, he does not pretend to be anything else. He thinks short term. He doesn't care about the long term. He doesn't care about America. He doesn't care about the Republican Party. He doesn't care about anybody except the short-term pleasure that comes from trolling people, the short-term pleasure that narcissists get from people adoring them or people fighting with them or people paying them attention. He is a pragmatist and a narcissist, and that basically defines him. Now, as a pragmatist, all he can bring is chaos and destruction. All he can bring is mayhem and anarchy. Nothing positive, not systemic, not that he touches, is possible. Trump did some good things in office. He appointed good people to regulatory agencies who did good things in deregulating, particularly in energy and some other fields, and the good stuff happened there primarily because he stayed out of it. But he didn't want to exert any effort, for example, in overturning Obamacare because there was no upside for him in overturning Obamacare. So he allowed Republicans to squander all that away in the Senate, and he allowed McCain to be the fall guy, and he did nothing to try to actually prevent what was going on. Trump did some good things vis-a-vis Israel. He supported Israel unequivocally. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. All of that was good. But he also was an unabashed supporter of every theocrat in the world. He was a supporter of the Saudis. He was a supporter of Putin. He was a supporter, massive supporter of Xi, even when he spoke up against China. A massive supporter and, engaged in bromance with the brutal dictator of North Korea. Buffering. What is buffering? All right. Hopefully the buffering will go away. I mean, it's not right to say that his principles are what's good for Donald Trump, because I don't think he knows what's good for Donald Trump. Not Donald Trump as a human being, as we understand what a human being is. I don't think he's about what's so-called good for Donald Trump. He's about what gets Donald Trump attention. He's about what is it really good for Donald Trump to run for president right now, and to lose again? What's good about that? No, but it'll get him attention. It'll keep him in the news. It'll get people paying attention to him. By the way, I think he'll be 80 will he be 80 years old when he runs for president? I mean, Biden just turned 80. I mean, there should be a cap. There should be a limit. You can't run for president when you're 80 years old. I just think that should be stopped, banned. It's absurd. There's a whole show to do about how, attitude to old people, and how much, how much of this country is geared towards pleasing old people, like Biden and Trump, and me soon, in terms of just the age group, Social Security, Medicare, all the policies that are geared towards benefiting old people at the expense of young people. It truly is stunning, but that's a whole other show. I mean, Trump is a misintegrator. He is an agent of chaos. He is an agent of destruction. He is an agent of malevolence. He is an agent that moves us closer to authoritarianism, not again because he can attain authoritarianism. He can't. He's not popular enough, but because he conditions us to accept that as the only solution possible. Certainly conditions the Republican Party to accept it as the only solution possible. His foreign policy was a disaster. Again, he did a few good things, supporting Israel. I think going after NATO for not paying enough for their own self-defense, certainly that was a good thing, although, again, he could have done it in an even more principled way. But beyond that, his acquiescence to Erdogan in Turkey, and just being willing to do what Erdogan wanted in Syria, and his attitude towards, again, North Korea, all of that was an absolute unmitigated disaster that the United States will pay for decades. His domestic policy was horrific. His tariffs, taxes on Americans, taxes on American industry, we're still suffering from that. Biden never withdrew those taxes because those tariffs are leftist policies that Biden embraced. His attack on immigrants, legal and illegal, we've never recovered from that. We have a massive shortage of immigration in this country, particularly legal immigration. Legal immigration is at rock bottom to a large extent because of Trump's disintegration. Sorry, Trump is not a misintegrator. I misspoke. Trump is a disintegrator. Trump is a D2, not an M2. Trump is clearly a D2. Trump is what will lead to an M2. Trump is what sets an M2 up. Trump and the left, in that sense, are the same. They both have a nihilistic streak. I mean, Trump, one of the reasons Republicans are so afraid of Trump is that if he loses in the primaries, they're afraid he goes off and starts and runs as an independent. And by doing that, destroys any chance of defeating the left. But you see, Trump doesn't care about defeating the left. He only cares about getting attention. He only cares about sowing chaos. Now, one of the things that I think is fascinating about Trump is that every single person of stature, every single person who going in, you would think, wow, that's a significant person, who worked for Trump, has awful things to say about him. There's not a single person of stature who worked for Trump who is enthusiastic about Trump, who is pro-Trump, who is positive about Trump. I mean, I just saw Bill Barr. I mean, Bill Barr, lifelong Republican, came into the Justice Department to save Trump from all the all the investigations and the BS, the FBI, and all the nonsense. You know, there's the whole thing. And he was there, he was pro-Trump, he was anti-left, he was there to clean things up, and he cleaned things up in a way that made Trump a shining example. He was as pro-Trump as anybody in Trump's cabinet was. He just published an editorial a few days ago. Trump will burn down the GOP. Time for new leadership. He says the Republican Party has a historic opportunity to revive the old Reagan coalition. The person standing in the way is the 45th president, writes the former Attorney General. If you want to read, what he says, you should read what he says in terms of how he describes Trump, how he described Trump as an agent of chaos, as an agent of destruction, as a person who doesn't give one iota. Or General Mathis, who everybody was like, whoa, this is the best appointment possible for Trump. This is a military genius. This is a great guy to be, Secretary of Defense. I was skeptical because I'm not a huge Mathis fan, but somebody who's admired among Republican circles. I mean, have you read what Mathis has to say about Trump? Have you read what General Kelly has to say about Trump? I mean, I read many of the descriptions of people who left, or the later chief of defense. I forget the guy who replaced Mathis, who was there till the end. I mean, he's horrified by Trump. Almost everybody is horrified by Trump. Everybody who has any character, who worked for him, anybody who worked in the Trump administration thinks the guy is a disaster and destructive and bad for the country. So don't take my word. Take the word of people who worked for Trump, people who were in the administration, people who saw him day to day functioning as president of the United States. Not the people who, want to suck up to him and who want the jobs and who want the money and who are going to be with him no matter what, like the people who still surround him in Mar-a-Lago. Take the people who have a life of their own, who are not dependent on Trump, but who are there in the administration day in, day out. Take John Bolton. Not a crazy man at all. Somebody who I have a lot of respect for in terms of his foreign policy. I mean, the stuff he describes in his book that Trump did from a foreign policy perspective is treasonous. It's horrific. That a man like that could even be considered for another time as president of the United States is unthinkable. I mean, you should read John Bolton's book and what he writes about Trump. And there's no incentive there. John Bolton's a lifelong Republican, has always been a Republican, always will be a Republican. He's got no incentive to destroy Trump. I don't think his book sold that much, even though it was a tell-all on Trump. I don't think he made a lot of money off of it. It's incredibly insightful. Incredibly insightful in terms of why Trump is such an unmitigated disaster. Trump is ignorant of economics. He's ignorant of human motivation. He's a great marketer. He knows how to drive people, but he has no understanding of foreign policy, he has no understanding of the world, and he has no understanding of economics. No understanding of economics. Somebody's asking me what the book is called. I had it here on my desktop. Just look John Bolton. Just look it up in Amazon. It'll come up. It was, I think, the last book he wrote, and it's certainly the only book he wrote on the Trump presidency. So it's easy to find based on the fact that I think it's the room where it happened, or something like that. In the room where it happened, something like that. I mean, you should, to some extent, when you don't know a person, judge him to some extent, at least, by how respected people I think you respect, think of him who know him intimately because they've worked with him. On that basis, Trump is a non-starter. But again, there are elements within the Republican Party that will be loyal to him no matter what. No matter what. And they will go off the cliff with him. They will destroy the Republican Party with him. They will lose another election with him. Anyway, Alan says, no understanding of trade, economics, foreign policy. Are we talking about Trump or Trudeau? Is there a difference? What exactly is the difference? Yes, he has no understanding of trade, economics, and foreign policy. That is Trump, right? And he doesn't care. He has no desire to have an understanding of any of those things. He is, on principle, I think, anti-knowledge, anti-expertise. I mean, and of course, he is an admirer of every authoritarian and their methods. What he said? He said kind of in admiration of the Chinese, even though this is false about the Chinese. He said in admiration of Chinese, the Chinese don't have a drug problem because they execute anybody who possesses drugs. And he is called for just getting rid of the drug problem. It's easy. Just execute all the drug dealers. I mean, that's the kind of disregard and disrespect for any kind of rights, any kind of, I mean, that's the other thing he doesn't have any understanding of, is the founding of this country, the principles on which it is based, the founding fathers, the concept of individual rights, and so on. Yeah. He's spoken positively about Durante's method of dealing with drugs, but in his announcement about 2024, he spoke, just last week, he spoke positively about Xi's method of eliminating drug use in China, which is not even Xi's method, he made it up, but he was kind of admirably talking about the idea of executing drug dealers, drug users, people who possess drugs. Anyway, I am more anti-Trump today than I was 2 years ago. I think it would be a disaster for the Republican Party to nominate him. I very much hope they nominate pretty much anybody else other than Trump. Once they nominate that person, we'll see whether he is better than, whether I think he's better than the Democrat. But almost anybody running that I can conceive of is going to be better than Trump. Also think that pretty much anybody running is going to have a better chance of beating Democrats to the extent that you care about that than Trump has. So to the extent that you guys vote, to the extent that you guys support candidates, to the extent that you guys promote candidates, I hope you don't promote Trump. All right. Let's see. So Super Chat, just to remind you, we have a goal of 650. We're at just under 200, so there's still a lot of room to grow. It'd be great to get some 100 or more level questions so we can chip away at that gap. We've got a lot of like $2 and $5 questions. It would be great to get the 50, 20, 100, $200 questions going. All right, let's see. Let's start with James's question, which is one for $50, so it gets priority. James says, I feel unbelievably fortunate to have lived in the time of Ayn Rand and Yaron Brook. Don't put me in the same sentence as Ayn Rand. I mean, I don't deserve it. Without Rand, I would be philosophically bereft, lost and confused, uncertain, a quivering, quakering neurotic, like the vast majority of non-objectivists have to be. I'm with you. It is what a time to be alive that we had the pleasure and the life-changing experience of reading Ayn Rand and studying her philosophy and integrating that philosophy into our lives. I mean, I don't know that I would be a confused, neurotic, lost, bereaved. I don't know. But, wow, it would be, my life is so much better for having read Ayn Rand. My life was so much better for having engaged with this philosophy and integrated it into my life, and so much better for actually living this life that absolutely, it's an amazing period of time. So thank you, James. Thank you for the sentiment. Thank you for including me, even though I shouldn't be included in the same line as Ayn Rand. But I appreciate it. All right, let's see. Tyler says, Yuan, just want to say thank you for all the content you provide. This is by far the best show on YouTube. Hope you and your family have a great Thanksgiving. Thank you, Tyler, and happy Thanksgiving to you too. And we will have a Thanksgiving show on Wednesday, so tune in, hopefully, for that. That'll be a great show. Tom Schumbaum says, many conservatives decry Trump's behavior, but still tout some of his accomplishment in tax and regulatory policy, foreign policy, and judges. But wouldn't most of those have been done by any standard conservative Republican? Certainly taxes would be done by any standard Republican. I mean, tax policy is a standard Republican thing, isn't it? I mean, they get into office, they always cut taxes. Bush cut taxes. Everybody except Bush Sr. cut taxes as a Republican. That would have happened. Regulatory policy would have happened the same way any Republican in office, even Jeb Bush. It would have mattered because they would have appointed basically the same people to the agencies, because those are the people who were lined up by the think tanks. Those are people who were lined up within Washington to take over the regulatory agencies. It's not like Trump brought in a whole new cadre. It's not like Trump reached out of the swamp and brought in new people to run the agencies. No, those people are already in the swamp that is Washington. They just tended to be conservatives, working at places like Heritage and Institute for Economic Affairs. Not the Institute for Economic Affairs, the American Enterprise Institute, American Enterprise Institute. And he swooped them in, and any Republican would have done that. Foreign policies, the only accomplishment he had, again, was Israel. I don't know if any Republican would have done that. I'm not sure they would have moved the embassy to Jerusalem. So good for him for doing that. Judges, again, it wasn't like Donald Trump had a list of judges that he selected. The list of judges that Donald Trump selected were all people that were presented to him by the Federalist Society. The Federalist Society dominates judicial nominees. Gorsuch, for example, was at the top of their list for a long time, even before Trump. So I think any Republican would have done those. Yes, I don't think Trump did anything as president, that stands out as exceptional and unique and spectacular, and that only he could have done. I mean, the only thing he did, which I think is what ultimately people love about him, is he, quote, stood up to the left. He stood up to the media. He yelled back at them. He didn't take it. He didn't take it lying down. He got up and punched back. That's what people like about him. None of his specific achievements are uniquely Trump. What people want, Scott expressed it here, what people want is a fighter. They don't care what he's fighting for. They only care what he's fighting against. So the only thing they care about is defeating the left. And Trump stood up to the left, he yelled at the left, he punched back at the left, he made fun of the Washington Post, he made fun of the New York Times, he went after the media, I think borderline violating First Amendment, but he did it consistently over and over again. He threatened Jeff Bezos, he threatened social media, he threatened all these guys. People love that. Love that. They just want to see the left somehow fought back against. What you stand for, you could be a fascist. I mean, for all I know, Scott would support a Nazi as long as he fought the left. because what you stand for doesn't matter as long as those guys lose. That's the attitude that will destroy America. That is the unquestionable attitude that will destroy America. In that sense, Scott and I think are helping slowly destroy this country. Nick says the people are tired of the establishment, and Trump is the only alternative for now. Maybe, but I'll take the establishment over Trump any day. I'm tired of the establishment as well. The establishment is pathetic and weak, but the alternative is not burn it all down. The alternative is not to burn down the world as we know it. That cannot be the right solution. It cannot be. It cannot be the way forward. And it is, you're right. They're so tired of the establishment that they'll take Trump. There are alternatives. Suddenly it looks like DeSantis presents an alternative. He seems like not to be an establishment guy. I don't know if you would consider Nikki Haley establishment. I don't know if you consider any of the other candidates establishment. I don't even know if people really know what establishment even is. And again, that's why I think Trump has a chance. Hopefully DeSantis runs and beats him. Hopefully somebody runs and beats him. My worry is that they split the field again and he wins in every primary because he's got the anti-Trump vote gets splintered around 10 candidates and he gets his 25% and he wins with 25%, which is what happened in 2016. He kept getting pretty much the same percentage. It grew over time because it grew over time as he became more popular, but he was getting low percentages, but everybody else was getting even lower. Alan says, General, thanks for some great chats over the last few weeks. Appreciate it. 2, after Trump, how do we get rid of Trudeau and his socialist, woke, psychopath cronies in North Venezuela, which is Canada? I mean, while I think Trudeau is awful, horrible, disgusting, Canada's not Venezuela. I mean, I do think it's important for us to be real. Canadians are not starving in the streets. Canadian businesses are not shuttering in the hundreds and the thousands. Justin Trudeau is a massive violator of individual rights. Justin Trudeau is a massive socialist. Justin Trudeau is an awful human being. Justin Trudeau's policy are destructive for Canada. But Canada is a rich country. Canada will not allow one prime minister to destroy it completely. Canada is not as insane or as... what happened in Venezuela is there was a worship of Chavez, and I don't think Canadians yet worship Trudeau in the same way. So while Canada is bad, it's not Venezuela. I think when we exaggerate, when we call Canada Venezuela of the North, people take us less seriously because it's obviously not true. Canadians are still driving nice cars, they still live in nice homes, they still have good jobs, they still have reasonably paying jobs and all of that. So it's not quite the same. Now, Canada is weak. Canada is growing. If it's growing at all, it's growing very slowly. Canada is susceptible to a real recession, so is the rest of the Western world. Canada is squandering the natural resources that it has and the opportunity to make as much money as it could right now, given natural resources prices. Canada could be this amazing place, particularly if you add global warming into the equation. Canada then becomes habitable and could be an amazing place. I mean, that would be amazing. And Trudeau is a disaster. Now, how do we get rid of Trudeau? Again, I think it's the same thing of what's necessary to get rid of Trump. I think in the end of the day, somebody has to come about with a positive message, like Reagan did. A positive vision for the country, a positive vision for prosperity, a positive vision for the world. Somebody has to come around and present something exciting, something people can get excited about, instead of just fighting the left and killing the left, and it's all about the left. No, how about making America really great? I mean, one of the great tragedies of Trump is that he said, make America great again, when he doesn't know what the hell that means. And he said, America first. Both of those terms are good terms. Great terms. But now they can never be used by a rational candidate because they'll be associated with Trump. but a candidate who understands what American greatness is about and can bring it about. And the same about Canada. So I'm projecting to America. I think Canada needs a vision of somebody who can articulate not an objectivist case, but a case for markets, a case for liberty, a case for individual rights, and a case for how Canada can be this amazing, successful, prosperous, rich, friendly, wonderful place that embraces immigrants, but respects the rights of everybody in the country. So, you know, Canada is, it's tragic what's happened in Canada. You've had it before. You had Justin Trudeau's dad. I mean, you've lived, Canada more than America has lived with socialists over and over and over and over again. Alan says Canada ran out of Tylenol in the shops last week. I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that things are bad. It's just not Venezuela bad. You're not running out of food. Not yet. Maybe you will. Maybe I'll have to retract all this, but I don't think so. And you're not seeing thousands of businesses collapse, and you're not seeing the entire agriculture sector collapse, and the oil industry has not collapsed, and it's just not happening yet. Now, yes, there are disruptions that are caused by Canada's stupid policies. But don't conflate it with Venezuela. Conflate it with what it is. You know, a massive violation of rights and massive destruction of prosperity in Canada. And Trudeau has to go. But you need a decent person who can beat him. I mean, there was an election recently, wasn't there, last year, and he won. So Canadians want him. So you have to ask the question, why do Canadians want him? And what do you have to offer Canadians to get rid of him? Jeffy asked, did you ever eat at Charlie Trotter's in Chicago? I did. I did eat at Charlie Trotter's in Chicago. I also ate at Charlie Trotter's in Vegas. He opened a Vegas restaurant a long time ago. And I'll mention one other Charlie Trotter restaurant in a minute. But Charlie Trotter's was amazing. It was fun. It was great food. I really enjoyed it. Charlie Trotter is one of the first original kind of celebrity chefs in America. He kind of, I think he might have been the first, him and maybe Wolfgang Puck. Trotter stayed, had his gourmet restaurant in Chicago. He opened one in Vegas at the, when the Palazzo, the one next to the Venetian first opened, he had, and one of my favorite restaurants of all time, you'll like this, Jeffrey. Yeah, I think you'll really like this. One of my favorite restaurants of all time was a restaurant within a restaurant. In Charlie Trotter's restaurant in Vegas, he had something called Bar Charlie. Bar Charlie. And basically it was a sushi bar. And it had maybe a dozen seats, maybe less than that. And it had this amazing chef, who would create these phenomenal dishes, sushi dishes, but they were elaborate dishes, raw fish, every one of them had a story. And he would tell you the story. So he would serve you the food and tell you the whole story about what it is he was presenting, what this symbolizes, and it was one of the best restaurants I've ever eaten at. Both the food was spectacular, the sauces were great, the sushi was fresh, and then of course the storytelling part of, as you know, part of eating is the visual and the whole experience of it. And Bar Charlie had it. I mean, Bar Charlie closed, I think, during the financial crisis. So this is in the 2000s. One of my first real foodie experiences was Bar Charlie. And I think it closed during the financial crisis. And the guy who was the chef at Bar Charlie ended up running a food truck in LA. I think he might have a restaurant in LA now, but it's like an Asian kind of fast food place. But his kind of storytelling dishes told the story and had multiple flavors and were intricate and complex and beautifully presented. That was special. And I don't know if I'd like it as much today. I guess, a more sophisticated eater today. I've eaten at a lot of great restaurants. But at the time, it was by far my wife and my favorite restaurant in the world. And Bar Charlie I think it was the Palazzo Hotel. So my fond memories of Charlie Trotter from back then. All right, here's Jeffrey. He knows of Bar Charlie. He says, Bar Charlie was run by Hiro Nagahara. Yes. The first chef I ever worked for. Oh my God. That is so funny. That's right. He went to work he was in a Florida restaurant, right? He says he's still a good friend. I was standing next to him when he got the call he was hired. All right. So if he's still a friend, tell him I miss Bar Charlie. I mean, wow, what an amazing coincidence. What a small world. That is so much fun, Jeffrey. Yeah. It's going to take me a little while to get over that. I'm going to have to tell my wife. She's going to get a kick out of it. Because for years, we've been looking at where is Hiro? What's he doing? Because I think he's got a couple of like fast food places in what do you call it, in LA. So, but he hasn't got this kind of a restaurant. I wish he did. I'd go there. Jeffrey says, don't forget Trotter's influence by Ayn Rand. Yes, Trotter was known as a Fountainhead fan. He was a big fan of the Fountainhead and talked about it often. And we sent him a number of appeals over the years. We tried over and over and over again to try to get a meeting with him, not just for me to eat at his restaurant, but a meeting with him as a fundraiser, to try to get him involved in the Institute in some way. He never really responded. He was not open to that. But yes, Charlie Trotter, like many, many successful people in America, was significantly influenced by Ayn Rand. Oh, that is so cool. I'm so amazed by the connection. When you mentioned the name of the sushi place in Florida that you worked of, it sounded familiar. It was familiar from me reading Hiro's biography and trying to locate him because I spent significant time on the web trying to locate him after he left Bar Charlie because I wanted to see what would happen to him. And I loved what he did at Bar Charlie. I don't know if you ever had an opportunity to go there, Jeffrey, but it was cool. All right. Justin says, great show today. Unrelated question. What role, if any, should the state have in the practice of assisted suicide? No role. I mean, the only role the state should have, I shouldn't say no role. The role the state should have is to make sure there wasn't murder. That is, that it truly was suicide, that the physician or whoever was only assisting, was not initiating, was not promoting, was not encouraging, and was not killing. So, because if you have assisted suicides and it becomes more prevalent, you will get cases where people use it as a way to disguise murder. So the state has the responsibility to investigate the death and to make sure that it wasn't a murder. But that's pretty much it, that it wasn't family members, it was something else. But generally, the state has no business in telling me, it has no business on the decision of birth, i.e. abortion, and it has no business at the decision of death, i.e. suicide. No business. Suicide is illegal. I mean, how can you have a right to life if you don't have the right to commit suicide? It's bizarre. It's wrong, and it's only going to get worse if the conservatives win, because it's religious. It's the religious influence on things. All right, we're up to almost $300. But that's still kind of less than half of what we raise on an evening show. I want to make sure that I don't cannibalize the evening super chat with the morning super chats. I want to make sure that we don't see a significant drop in super chat contributions in the evening shows because of the morning shows. I don't know if that's the reason, so I'm not going to assume it is. But I'm just putting that out there. We did do really, really well, Super Chat-wise, Saturday and Sunday. So we had great Saturdays and Sundays. So I suspect it has more to do with the fact that it's Monday. And you guys have already contributed a lot to the show the previous 2 days. We do have quite a few listeners right now. Let me just say quickly that if you're listening to the show and you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. If you're listening to the show and you haven't yet given a thumbs up, please give the show a thumbs up. Give it a like, because that helps with the algorithm significantly. And if you're not yet a supporter of the show, please consider doing so on Subscribestar, Patreon, Locals, or the YaronBrookShow.com/support, YaronBrookShow.com/support, where you can use PayPal. So please consider doing all of that. Given how many people are watching live right now, we must have quite a few new people. But please subscribe if you're not a subscriber and if you're interested in what I have to say. Although I expect I'll lose more subscribers than I gain today. Okay, Michael says, are abstractions objective? Yes. Properly constructed abstractions are objective because they are linked to reality in the process of abstraction. You have abstraction from reality. So properly constructed abstractions are objective. Everything we carry in our head is an abstraction at the end of the day. If I say chair, chair is not any particular chair. Chair is an abstraction. And it's objective to the extent that it refers to actual things in reality. So, yes. All right, Richard is here. Richard's kind of on and off in terms of watching live shows. It's interesting. Hi, Yaron. What countries do you think represent the best opportunity for spreading objectivism? I have friends from in the UK and Australia who seem very receptive, but California also seems very fertile ground. Look, I think the entire Anglo-Saxon world is very open and receptive to objectivism. Certainly Australia, Canada, potentially New Zealand, but certainly Australia, Canada, and the UK, probably the UK number one, Canada and Australia 2 and 3 in some order, probably is where you see the most receptivity. I think any place that has been influenced by kind of the Anglo-Saxon tradition, the Anglo-Saxon sense of life, that have been influenced by the general trends towards free markets, and more importantly, the general trend towards respect for the individual, which the Anglo-Saxon world has in a way that the non-Anglo-Saxon world does not have. So I think it very much, all of those places, certainly California and every part of the United States has a huge upside. California in particular, because California has a lot of people who are very much connected to science and technology and therefore to reality and to progress and success and flourishing. And those are things that they care about. So I think at the end of the day, one has to believe that if objectivism cannot succeed in Silicon Valley, it cannot succeed anywhere. Because if it's not appealing to the engineers and the business people of Silicon Valley, who is it supposed to appeal to, and who is going to be interested? So I still haven't figured out how to get it there and how to get it to be influential in the Valley, but I still think that's our make or break place. Our make or break place. Other places in which objectivism is appealing: Eastern Europe remembers communism, South America, given up hope on pretty much any other system because they've all failed it. Scandinavia, funnily enough, Scandinavia has a what do you call it? A sense of individualism, maybe a Viking sense of life. In spite of the socialism or the redistribution of wealth that exists in places like Sweden and Norway and Denmark, there is a certain spirit that Scandinavia has. First of all, Ayn Rand is very popular in Scandinavia. And secondly, Sweden is very entrepreneurial. And so is Denmark, I think. So very entrepreneurial cultures. A certain respect for the individual exists there. Israel's always been very, very fertile ground for objectivism. And then, shockingly enough, China. China, I think I've always thought is very, fertile ground. They don't have Christianity, which is a massive advantage. Super entrepreneurial. I think super potentially individualistic. we just need to get rid of this kind of regime. If China was ever free, I would say China's number one. If China was ever actually free, liberated, free in the Western sense, in the contemporary sense, I think China would be number one. It would jump because it doesn't have Christianity. And it clearly has the entrepreneurial spirit. It clearly has the scientific and engineering spirit. So, and I met Chinese objectivists or Chinese people who love Ayn Rand, and they've inspired me. And they were doing it under circumstances that are very difficult. A different language, different culture, very, very different culture, and an authoritarian state. Richard says, class schedules also make it hard to sync up with your schedule, like and share the show, by the way. My Australian friend and a friend from the US have become objectivists, mostly because I shared YBS with them and then Ayn Rand. That is phenomenal. Thank you, Richard. That's exactly what you guys all need to do. Share, 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 share. We're not going to win this unless objectivists become world-class at sharing, know how to do it, and do it aggressively. No way are we ever going to do that. Going to become successful unless we do that. God. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to ignore Richard because the stuff he says on the chat is so ignorant. I have to hold my tongue because please don't believe anything Richard writes in the chat because he's ignorant. I agree with Silicon Valley, Richard says. Computer science people are very reachable in my experience. Also, I love the new format. Even if I can't reach every show, thanks for additional content. I'm loving it even if I can't catch every show live. Great. I mean, look, many more people listen to the Yaron Brook Show not live than listen to it live. So I have no problem with the numbers live because the numbers of non-live people, over 2,000 people listen to almost every show. I mean, depends on the topic. Once in a while, we'll get one that's under 2,000. Most of them are over 2,000. Almost all of them are over 2,000. Some go over 3,000. Some go over much more than that. And that doesn't include the podcast. A lot of people listen to the show on podcast. They don't even watch it on YouTube. That's another about 2,000 people. So I'd say 4,000 or 5,000 people. Anywhere between 3,000 to 5,000 people watch every single one of these shows. Richard says, I strongly believe I will live to see free China in my lifetime. I hope so. I hope so. And I think you will too. That would be phenomenal because I've already decided that I haven't decided. I'm probably never going to go to China again, and I really like China. So it would be great if China was freed and I could go back. That would be phenomenal. And of course, phenomenal for the billion people in China. The Chinese people I've met are super smart and are open to Rand. They hate the CCP and see the practical benefits of reason. Yes. Although you'll also meet a lot of Chinese in the United States that are mindless followers of the Chinese government, and maybe they're afraid. We'll talk about, this idea of the Chinese tracking their students in the U.S. and having kind of police forces in the West to track their own students. We'll talk about that on one of the shows in the future. China is pretty scary these days. But I really, really hope for the sake of the Chinese and for our sake. Also, imagine the prosperity we would get if China really opened up. Imagine the prosperity we would all have if the tension with China disappeared. I mean, God, economic growth in the world, everything else held constant, would dramatically increase just if China became free. So agree with you completely, Richard. I mean, I agree, and I hope that you're right. Michael says, Paul Ryan just came out and said, if we stick with Trump, we'll be losing elections. I think the GOP is getting it. Paul Ryan never liked Trump. Paul Ryan's always spoken negatively about Trump. Paul Ryan matters zero to what actually happens in the Republican primaries. Paul Ryan is a non-entity within the Republican Party. Unfortunately, I kind of borderline like Paul Ryan sometimes, at least what he says, not necessarily what he does. But in terms of actual Republican Party politics, he is meaningless, absolutely meaningless. Richard again, once you untangle the conflict between the moral and practical dichotomy, secular Eastern Asians and computer science types are very open to objectivism. The moral is the practical, and only the moral principles can you achieve success. Absolutely. Absolutely. You've hit it right on, you hit it right on the nail. It's absolutely right. And yes, I think that appeals to their entrepreneurial spirit. All right, Liam says, per Amazon and Zoom, would people have tolerated lockdowns for as long as we did, pre-Amazon and Zoom? I don't know. Funny how we all have pretty much forgotten a lockdown tyranny at this point. I don't know. I mean, it shocked me, surprised me, bewildered me that we tolerated it with Amazon and Zoom. Without it, maybe not. People couldn't. I mean, a lot of people who made a living through Zoom couldn't have. Maybe they would rebel sooner. Maybe the economic cost would have been much, much greater, and it couldn't have lasted. Hard to tell. But yes, people forget because people weren't really that upset about the lockdowns. So it didn't leave an imprint. I'm still shocked by it. I still think, in some sense, it's the beginning of the end, right? The fact that we tolerated lockdowns is the beginning of the end. And then the whole COVID, everything about COVID suggests dysfunction and irrationality and the beginning of the end, if you will, of American culture. So I still carry that, that with me in terms of resentment of everything that happened during COVID. And by the way, Trump's response to COVID is enough to never vote for him for president. One of the reasons I wouldn't vote for him in 2020 is his response to COVID was so pathetic, so ignorant, so murderous. I think lots and lots and lots of people died because of Trump's response to COVID. And again, sowing chaos and disruption and no strategy, no thinking, evasion. I've never seen evasion like that. It's just going to go away. It'll go away. Believe me, it's going to go away. I know, it's going to go away. It will just go away all by itself. No problem. And then advocating for lockdowns and then not advocating for lockdowns and then condemning Georgia for opening up before the Trump administration told them it was okay to open up, and then condemning other states for not opening up, and complete inconsistency, complete randomness, complete nothingness. The exact opposite of what a commander-in-chief should be. Exact opposite of what a president should be like. It makes no difference if they were willing to blame or not. The question is, what is objectively true? Objectively, he is to blame. He is to blame. His sticking his head in the sand from middle of January all the way until March, that is a crime. It's a crime. They got people killed. We need convoys of barges bringing people to our shores. This is Richard asking. We need to completely deregulate the labor market and immigration. I want to see a USA with 1 billion people. Also, DeSantis is leading Trump in GOP primary polls. Yeah, I mean, Cruz was leading Trump in GOP primary polls. People, again, I'm not saying he'll win. I'm saying don't rule him out. And DeSantis hasn't announced he's running. Is DeSantis up for the fight? It will be a fight, and it will get personal. Is DeSantis willing to get personal? So I think DeSantis could beat Trump. I really do. I worry that he won't. Just a worry. It's not a prediction. I didn't predict Trump will win. All I'm saying is that Trump has a bigger chance. Trump has a bigger chance than I think people give him credit for. And I agree with you completely about 1 billion people in the U.S. I agree completely about immigration. God, this country would be so much better if we had more immigrants in this country. I think it is, we need them, both labor force, but we also need to refresh the spirit of liberty. We need smart people who want to live under freedom, who want to be entrepreneurs, and that spirit of entrepreneurship, that American sense of life is is kind of reborn anew with every generation of immigrants. Not to say every immigrant brings it, not to say every immigrant buys it, not to say every immigrant absorbs it, particularly in a world where they go to school and university and they taught how horrible America is. But bigger chance of getting a revival from them than there is, I think, from Americans. Imagine if we opened it up to all the entrepreneurs in the world, people who want to start businesses, made it easy for them to come to the United States and start a business. I'm reading this book about the chip industry, the history of the chip industry. How many of those people, how many of the people who created the chip industry in America are immigrants? An astounding number from all over, from Europe, from China, all over the place. And changed the world. Changed the world. Fenn Harper says, he's quoting him, "Is it any nobler to fight to save a value than to fight to destroy an anti-value?" Question from my girlfriend, who I met by advocating objectivism on a Discord server. Cool. Good for you. It's much nobler to save a value. Values are what we live for. And you got to fight to destroy an anti-value because it's a threat to your values. But first you have to be willing to have values, to fight for values, to attain values. And most of us, the reality is that most of us in our day-to-day lives, we're not going to be in a position to fight anti-values, but we sure are going to be on a constant basis able and presented with the opportunities to fight for our values all the time, constantly. So I think the positive is always more important. It's life affirming. It gives one, it provides us with so much self-esteem. It provides us with value because the value we're attaining. It provides us with life, right? Provides us with life. Richard says, "I've heard DeSantis will not announce until May when the Florida legislature is no longer in session. I asked my Chinese friend how many Chinese would move to the U.S. if allowed to. He said all of them, at least the smart ones." I don't think all of them. There are a lot of Chinese who are very nationalistic. There are a lot of Chinese that have all kinds of issues and problems, but a lot of them would move to the U.S. There's no question about it. A lot of them would move to Taiwan. A lot of them would move, and a lot of them are moving. The problem today with moving to the U.S. is immigration restrictions, and I think there's a real fear in China, among Chinese, that they will be discriminated against in the United States. They really fear racism in the U.S. I hear that from people from Chinese heritage who live in the United States, who are American, who were born in the U.S., and they really experience hostility from native-born Americans. And I think Chinese are now hesitant to come here for school because of this feeling, whether it's objective, whether it's justified by the numbers, whether you can actually see it in the numbers, I don't know. But certainly people of Chinese descent feel that discrimination is way up and is a real issue for them. All right, Fenn Harper just gave us $100. Thank you, Fenn Harper. Please review the song, "Be Strong and Hit Stuff." God, where do you guys get these songs from? He says the title like that because it is a song from a vocalized soundtrack from a show where the characters are monster fighting warriors. Okay. All right. I've written it down. It's down on my ledger. I owe you guys an album. By the way, Shahzad changed the movie from Idiocracy, which I might watch now because everybody's been commenting on it, to The Seven Samurais. So I'm looking forward to rewatching The Seven Samurais. So I've got an album, Igor by Tyler, the Creator. I've got Seven Samurais, and I've got Be Strong and Hit Stuff by Jeff Williams. I've got. This is going to be fun. I'll do that. All right, we're now only $73 away from our target, so it's suddenly become quite reachable. All right, Harper Campbell says, objectivism is not hard. We're just afraid to admit a plethora of people are dishonest and worthless. A lot of them are dishonest, and many of them are worthless. Some of it is that we don't present ideas very well, and we don't spend the time and the energy to do it. We just accept the world as it is. We need to fight better, and we need to fight more. Richard says, do you think that a lawyer can move from legal practice to finance, such as VC or PE, venture capital and private equity? I have heard that there's a lot of resentment towards lawyers, which is understandable, but I've heard of JDs going into finance. Yeah, there are lots of JDs in finance, particularly, if you're a business lawyer, if you know how to structure deals, if you come from the deal side of the business, that's definitely an in, particularly with private equity. So if you're going to become a lawyer, if you're going to go into law, then go into the business side and preferably into kind of the deal-making side, the M&A side, the side where you're structuring deals, you're structuring arrangements, you're helping companies come into being, the forming company side, something like that, which is of value to VCs or PE funds. But generally, like many companies out there, VC and PE funds are just looking for smart, motivated people. Off the charts smart, off the charts motivated. They don't care that much about your degree. Hopper Campbell, I don't think objectivism, I don't think objectivism is too hard for people like Jordan Peterson and Yoram Chazoni to grasp. They are just intellectually dishonest powerlusters. I think at the end of the day, yep. All right. Thank you. Nick Bruno says, Brooke for president. I don't know why you guys wish that on me. In a world where I could be elected president, you wouldn't need me to be elected president. That's the reality. But I've said this before. I would have so much fun at those presidential debates. It would be so much fun. And you guys would have so much fun. It would be a blast. It would be a blast to give the kind of answers that I would give in those presidential debates. I'd lose in a landslide. But just to be up on stage. So if anybody can get me onto the debate stage for the 2024 presidential election, I'll do it. I'll run just to be on the debate stage, not to win. Just to be on the debate stage, I can say the stuff that I want to say. But you have to get so much on the polls, and it's very hard to get up on the debate stage. But if you can make that happen, that'll be terrific. Thank you, Nick. KFAX says, Turkey, Thanksgiving money. Thank you. I really appreciate it. We're going to a really nice restaurant in Thanksgiving, our favorite restaurant in Puerto Rico. So that's going to be a lot of fun. All right. I have to skip to Jeffrey Miller. Jeffrey says, I messaged Hero about your visit. I'll let you know what he says. He is planning to open a fine dining restaurant in LA called Silver Paper. As soon as he does, next time I'm in LA, certainly gonna. So let me know if he actually opens it, and I'd love to meet up with him because we were kind of regulars. I mean, we would go. There was a period where we would go to Vegas. I don't know, 3-4 times a year, and we fell in love with Bar Charlie, so we would go a lot. It was very expensive for us in those days, but we would go. We'd save up and go to Bar Charlie. So I doubt he'd remember us, but it would be cool to meet up with him again. Thank you, Jeffrey, for doing that. All right. Matthew says, how or where can I buy a signed copy of In Pursuit of Wealth? I didn't see an option on your website. You can buy a copy of In Pursuit of Wealth on Amazon, I believe. And then you just have to find a time to meet up with me, and I'll sign the copy. Or if you mail it to me, I'll sign it and mail it back to you. But ideally, you come to one of my live events, and I sign it for you. But you can buy it on Amazon. Pretty sure it's on Amazon. Daniel says, just curious if you read Lisa Dugan's book on Ayn Rand. No, Mean Girl, which is anti-Rand. What do you think about it? No, I mean, I'm not interested in reading books that are anti-Rand. They're just, particularly, I mean, when they're ignorant, and everything I read about this book, it sounds ignorant. Colt says, I don't want Trump, but he's not as bad as Josh Hawley. I agree with that. But you see, Josh Hawley is an M2. Trump is a D2. Trump is what makes Josh Hawley possible. Without the Trumps of the world and without the far left, there is no Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley can only be possible because of Trump and the other D2s. Most other D2s are egalitarians on the left. So Josh Hawley is really, really bad. He's not as bad as Josh Hawley, MTG, and Vance. They are even worse. DeSantis, I have mixed feelings about. I agree. I have a mixed feeling about him as well. The GOP is a dump fire, yes, but a dump fire to a large extent created by Trump. Richard says, what about lawyers working in structured finance, capital markets? Would that help them move into finance work? Yes. Maybe a hedge fund, maybe a private equity fund, yes. So structured finance, anything to do with finance, business structuring, anything like that would be good. So definitely, if that's the direction you want to get, find a job where you're doing legal stuff for financial business kind of transactions. Structured finance, capital markets, you're more likely to get hired by a hedge fund than you are by a PE or VC fund. M&A, you're more likely to get in a PE fund. Right. Tyler Betts, I've heard people say don't try to be an objectivist politician because you can't get anything done, but couldn't an objectivist in public office be beneficial as an outspoken public intellectual? Yes. If you understand that running for office and being in office is an opportunity to speak out, then yeah, that would be great. The problem is it's very expensive to run for office. Is that the best use of money in terms of educating the public? And then when you get into office, to what extent are you going to be corrupted? And I think it's very easy for objectivists to be corrupted by politics. You know, what am I going to say no to everything? You know, I compromise a little bit here. This isn't that bad. It moves us a little bit, you know, and they don't speak. They don't take the microphone. Look at Alan Greenspan. Look at Alan Greenspan. He had the entire world listen to him. He had a microphone right in front of his face over and over again, pretty much every single day. Everybody listened to Alan Greenspan. He never said a word. Never educated the world about what was really going on. You lose it when you achieve power. Did you see Josh Hawley and Jordan Peterson? The guy is Joseph Goebbels reincarnate. I have not, but I will look for Josh Hawley on Jordan Peterson. I don't watch all these things. I don't know where you guys have time to watch Lex Friedman and Jordan Peterson. There's so many of these. There are a lot of interesting shows and that I'd like to see and listen to, and I just don't have the time. I have to do this, and I have to read, and where do I have time to? I'll try. Michael asked, why does Yoam Chazoni hate Kant? He's basically a Kantian. He hates Kant because he associates Kant justifiably with the subjectivism of the world in which we live. He hates Kant because he associates him with modern liberalism, modern subjectivism, modern relativism, which is all justifiably he views as originating in Kant. He also hates Kant because he views Kant as an Enlightenment figure. He views Kant as pro-reason. He doesn't understand that Kant is the enemy of reason. He views him as pro-reason. So he is anti-Kant, some for good reason. His anti-subjectivism, relativism. But he's also anti-Kant for just not understanding Kant. That is, he thinks that Kant is a defender of reason, and he hates him for that. Florida Nick says, do you remember what you talked to Mike Mensa about? If so, I'd love to hear the story. I don't remember. Sorry. Frank says, it may not be an admirable trait, but I find it intriguing. Trump never says he's sorry. He might say, excuse me, do your own rules support contrition? Absolutely. Absolutely. Contrition is crucial. Being willing to say I was wrong, being willing to say I was wrong and I damaged you and hear reparations, being truthful, being objective about the world, knowing what value you actually present and what you've done wrong. No, you know, it's not admirable at all for somebody to never say he's sorry when he should be. All right, Michael asks, where do you see the YBS in 10 years? Oh, God, 10 years. That's a long time. I don't know. If we're successful, then 10 years, something must have happened. and we now have somewhere between 500,000 to 1 million subscribers. And we are, the Iran Book Show is a dominant public intellectual outlet. All kind of speculating and random to some extent, right? Quinton, long ago in school, I learned about Aristotle's pathos, logos, and ethos. Does it ever make sense to appeal to someone's emotions when forming a persuasive argument? Yeah, I mean, to the extent that you can muster an emotional context that is supportive of the rational argument, I think your rational argument will fall on more receptive ears, a more receptive mind. So to the extent that you can couch things within a framework that will elicit positive emotions together with a reason, I think you increase your ability to influence, and you increase the openness and receptivity of somebody. And on the other hand, if you say stuff that shuts them down emotionally, that they immediately create cognitive dissonance and they don't want to think about it, it's too ugly, it's too upsetting, then the rational argument falls on deaf ears, and they never relate to it. So you do definitely have to think about what is the emotion that you're eliciting. Okay, Richard is still here. He says, I had a friendship that I damaged badly, but was able to repair it by repenting. Good for you. I didn't expect it, but I knew my integrity required me to make amends. Good for you. We were able to resume the friendship. It's never too late to right a wrong. Absolutely, and it's a moral must to right the wrong. It's a moral necessity to right a wrong. It's existentially damaging to you not to right the wrong. Michael Sanders says, is Canada descending into socialist hellhole? It's certainly descending into more and more socialism. Whether it's yet a hellhole, I'm skeptical. But if it continues unabated, which I don't think it will, it could become a hellhole. Michael asks, do you foresee intellectuals becoming less envious and nihilistic slowly over time? Yes. I hope so. Better be so, as objectivism has more and more of an impact on the culture. Anonymous user says, I know several intelligent, productive individuals who would love to move to the U.S., but do not because of the regulatory hassle. I do too. I think we all do. Let's get rid of the regulatory hassle. Let's invite them in. All right, Richard has the final word, which is appropriate given how much money he's given today with all the $20 contributions. I'll top off and hit the goal. Thanks for the advice and great show. And then then Ashton, where have you been? Ashton has been missing in action for like a month, 2 months. It's been a while. It's been a while. So Ashton is back with as always, Ashton, back in a big way with a $100 contribution. So we're blown through the goal easy. So Ashton Milky Way is back. It's great to have you back. Thank you. Thank you for all the support over all these months. Ashton, there was a period a few months ago where Ashton was probably my #1 contributor to the Iran Book Show. And then he's kind of disappeared for a while, and now he's back, so that's good. All right, so what is Ashton? Ashton has a super chat, and he's saying, it's really heartbreaking to see so many young men and women in Ukraine, all possible lawyers, doctors, engineers, entrepreneurs, innovators, and inventors, have their lives cut short because of some Russian autocrat's megalomaniac ambitions. I mean, even as reading it, I'm almost getting tears in my eyes. Absolutely. And this is true on the Ukrainian side, and it's true on the Russian side. I mean, how many of these kids, particularly now that they've enlisted all these kids, how many of these kids are dying for something they understand? They don't know what they're dying for on the Russian side. And on the Ukrainian side, this is a sheer act of hostility from the Russian side. It has no justification. I resent the people who try to justify what Putin has done. And hundreds, no, not hundreds, tens of thousands of people are dying. As you said, their lives are being cut short. And it's not just lawyers, doctors, it's potential lawyers and doctors and engineers and entrepreneurs and people who could make the world a better place. It's the young generation of Ukraine, the young generation of Russia is being decimated. And for what? For some, for Putin, who's probably the richest man in the world because he's stolen hundreds of billions of dollars from his fellow Russian citizens. I mean, the guy is a monster. And yet there are people on the American right and there are people within Russia who will continue to defend him. And that is monstrous. Monstrous. I mean, the guy should be hung from the tallest tree in Moscow tonight. But he won't be. He won't be. We'd rather have a bunch of young kids die that actually go after the evil monstrosities that make this destruction and devastation possible. The Putins of the world. Tallest tree in Moscow, guys, tonight. That is a call to arms. Bree says, Idiocracy is stolen from a short story called The Marching Morons by C.M. Kornbluth. I don't like watching stolen IP without credit given to the creator. I agree with you. I had no idea. I don't know the short story and I don't know the movie. But I agree with you. I hate when that happens. Mr. Muffin says, do you prefer to read or listen to books? Well, I prefer to read, but I do more listening because I can listen while mainly exercising and walking. I do a lot of walking and I do a lot of exercising, and I can listen while I do that. I don't have blocks of time to read. And when I do, like on airplanes, I find it hard to concentrate on airplanes, so I tend to watch movies and TV shows on airplanes. So I don't literally read as much as I would like to. I do much more listening than reading, even though I far prefer reading. And I absorb the material much better when I read, and I underline and I can go back to it. Like I'm reading The Chip War, which is an excellent, excellent book, which I highly recommend. I will do a review of it when I finish it. I so regret not reading it and underlining and being able to quote stuff to you, and I probably will buy the book and do a second quick reading after listening to the whole thing. So that's probably what's going to happen. All right, everybody, we reached our goal. You guys surprised me. Thank you. I think Richard had a big part of it. Thank you, Ashton, for being back. And thank you, Fred Harper, for the $100 to review the song, and thank you for all the super chatters. You were great. We were an hour and 40 minutes. I thought today's show would be a short show. Tomorrow we'll be doing one of our morning shows again, so stay tuned. Armin just came in with another $100. Thank you, Armin. Armin is now becoming my number one supporter on Super Chat, I think, with just the volume. So thank you, Armin. So tomorrow we will be on at, I think again, at 11 o'clock East Coast time. I will give you more information in the morning, and I will talk to you all then. And have a great night and have a great rest of your week, and hope you're enjoying your work, the first work day of the week. And if I don't see you, if I don't talk to you specifically between now and Thanksgiving, have a fantastic Thanksgiving. Thanks, everybody. Don't forget to support the show on YaronBrookShow.com/support, Patreon, Subscribe Star, and Locals.